Good day to you. This is Galactic on a Sunday, the 18th of May in Chico, California. Over here you'll see a outline that I have shown before, but the reason for showing this is to give a kind of a blueprint for what I am attempting to summarize at this time, which is what? Geometry. What is it? It's said to be a branch of mathematics. And when I began yesterday to talk about that definition, I noticed that I jumped the rails. So I had to offload that video for the time being because I became much more emotionally involved than I had intended. And a scientific presentation should not be overflowing with emotion. It's kind of it defeats the purpose of science, does it not? So I just wanted to show you that without going into it at this time, and just show you this regularly throughout my 2 decades of pursuing science single-mindedly. I return to the subject of spherical geometry. And I have to be cautious when I'm doing that, I noticed, because it's extremely frustrating to me to see the level of ignorance that just prevails in our educational system, including these links to Wikipedia. What is geometry? Should have a very clear answer. The answer one might expect would be that it is the study of objects that have relational properties that can be formalized in propositional logic. We're all aware from our schooling of the nature of a triangle. The smallest enclosure of lines. If you have one line, you don't even have a surface. If you have two lines, they either intersect or they're parallel, according to a certain axiomatic approach that leads to that postulate. And that's attributed to Euclid, his parallel postulate, which literally stumped the band for 2,500 years. Nobody to this day has ever figured out why Euclid made such a hideous mistake. And it is a mistake. His parallel postulate it was like throwing a wrench into a perfect machine. And he just threw it in there, and nobody knows his thought process for his parallel postulate. So in the 19th century, it was claimed, and you can find all the literature about non-Euclidean geometry. Non-Euclidean geometry was discovered simultaneously in Russia and Transylvania, believe it or not. Bolyai Janusz discovered non-Euclidean geometry. That's what he called it, and so did Gauss, who found out about that right away. And a man named Lobachevsky also discovered what he called non-Euclidean geometry. The reason that this term was applied to those two geometries was that it was non-Euclidean in exactly and only one way. It defied the parallel postulate. And from that we got two versions of what came to be called non-Euclidean geometry, which has a formal name in each case. One of the generative geometries, the so-called non-Euclidean, is called elliptical. Elliptical. The other one is called hyperbolic. Hyperbolic. And those are the only two known forms of what is stupidly called non-Euclidean. Let me just fill in a gap in the knowledge of science that only apparently I'm capable of filling in this gap, a hideous gap. That is not non-Euclidean. Science is forced to Euclidean geometry. There is no other geometry except Euclidean. The reason that the two new geometries were called non-Euclidean is because they were defying the parallel postulate, which didn't even belong in the system. The parallel postulate is really nonsensical, but it took 2,000 years for Lobachevsky and Bolyai to discover non-parallel geometry. Geometry that has no parallelity. Or parallel, I think you have to say all three L's. Parallelity, yes, that's a mouthful. But it certainly isn't non-Euclidean. Is there such a thing as non-Euclidean geometry? Well, according to Wikipedia, all the textbooks, all the universities, and every scientist, mathematician, or geometrician, or geometer throughout time prove, even if they don't say so, they prove it by their lives. No. There's only one geometry. There only has ever been one geometry. And there's no such thing as non-Euclidean geometry. It's a direct contradiction. Is that true? Is everything that I said provable? If you look up spherical geometry, as I've done more times than I care to count, but if you look up spherical geometry in any textbook, if you begin at Wikipedia, as I always do, because it's a very good place to begin, what you don't want to do is end there. You use Wikipedia to find other references, is how I use it. Wikipedia will simply not give you what you're looking for 9 out of 10 times. It just can't, because it's an encyclopedic dictionary. It's really a lookup table, so that you can find out what experts, people who actually know what they're talking about in their field, will say about spherical geometry. Well, I can tell you, I'm the world's foremost expert on spherical geometry. You know why? I discovered it. I discovered spherical geometry. What this article will show is that the word geometry is shit. When you say spherical, there is no geometry. There's no geometry of the sphere. None. You know what it should be called? There is something there, but it's not geometry. It's trigonometry. Trig. That's not geometry. That's trig. What's the difference? Trigonometry is pure numbers. It's only numbers. Geometry has no numbers. Geometry is not a branch of mathematics. Wikipedia says that it is. Well, Wikipedia is not always right. Geometry is not a branch of mathematics. You know why? Because the order is being inverted. It's hierarchical. You have been brainwashed, and you're scientists for 2 centuries now. Really, it goes all the way back. Wherever there has been a number system in use, and of course there's always been some number system in use since the beginning of human history. There's always been some number system. It could be just counting numbers. It could be far more sophisticated. But numbers were used to measure. And what can you measure with numbers? Distance. That's it. You can measure length. That's all. That's all numbers are good for. Well, of course, you can read all the footnotes. There are weight measures which have numbers. There are various quantities that have numbers attached. But that's not what numbers are. When numbers are used for quantities, they're counting numbers. And that's all they are. You're using the positive integers. And that's all you can do, is count. But if you add a zero to the system and use the object called the line, then you can measure distance. Well, then if you want to measure distance, for instance, to the moon, the sun, the planets, and the stars, which of course we do, you have to use straight line distance. You can't stretch a ruler out to the moon, but you can do the equivalent with trigonometry. Use trig. Use a triangle, and you get a parallax. Use a triangle to compute distance. And that's why spherical geometry, so-called, is called spherical geometry rather than what it really is. Because there's no difference. When you say trigonometry, that's the only geometry you'll ever know. There is no other geometry. It's trig. It's straight lines. It's triangles. Well, what about the sphere? Here's where it gets so confoundedly, fascinatingly interesting. The level of stupidity that can be persistent for so long, for centuries, right up to the present day. This article is called Spherical Geometry. Well, that's simply an incorrect title. The two words don't go together. There's no spherical anything. There's no spherical geometry. It's trig. It's linear. It's Euclidean. You know why? I discovered the reason for that. I had help, and every discoverer has to acknowledge his sources. John Horton Conway, the greatest mathematician since Euler, who just died of the COVID virus in 2020. I cried when I heard that. He's one of my teachers. He discovered the definition of a number. And nobody before Conway knew what a number was. It could not be defined. It was never defined. What is a number? Because there are so many different number systems, and there are so many infinities, the irrational numbers are densely packed on the line. What John proved, but he didn't realize that he had proved it, and no mathematician realized what John had proved. I realized what John proved with his surreal number tree. He proved what is a linear number. He proved what is a number. And when I saw that and I studied it, I was in a trance for days. I started dreaming at night because I had just discovered what John discovered, but I used geometry to discover it. What is a number? You cannot know what a number is completely unless you know what geometry is. They're the same definition. The definition of what a number is the definition of what is geometry. What is so utterly beyond belief? I will die before anybody ever believes what I'm about to say. I'll be dead by the time my discovery comes to anybody's attention. But I'll tell you and you'll be the first to hear it. The binary number system defines the sphere in the same way that the counting numbers define the line. And there is such a thing as spherical geometry because there's such a thing as a spherical number system. And what I just realized just over the past 2 weeks, although I knew it, I had never put it into words. The binary number system on which all computers are based, it is the fundamental number system of the universe. And everything else is derivative. The basic number of the universe is 1 proportion 1, 1 proportion 1, parameterizing both circular space and spherical space simultaneously with a coherent, closed, complete number system that works, and it works better than linear numbers. That's blasphemy. That is insane what I just said. I'm so far beyond the pale of what goes for insanity now, like saying that spherical geometry is a branch of mathematics, which is true the way it's used. The way mathematics is using its system, it defines spherical geometry. Well, it defines it out of existence. There is no such thing as spherical geometry. At least there wasn't until 2022, when I discovered spherical geometry. I discovered it. And that's the greatest discovery since Euclid. But it's more than that. It not only redefines what geometry is, it redefines what numbers are for. The universe uses numbers, but it does not use linear numbers. It uses binary. And it only uses binary. And that leaves out such numbers as 1 over 3. 1 over 3 is not a representable number. Did you know that? No computer can represent 1/3, 1/6, 1/9, 1/11, 1/13, 1/23, 1/47. Those numbers are not representable on a computer. They're not reachable numbers. They're irrational numbers. Well, I found out that the universe doesn't use irrational numbers at all. It doesn't know about the number pi. It knows nothing of Euler's E number. It doesn't know what the fine structure constant is. It doesn't use those numbers. They don't exist. And you know the number that is thought to be a number that doesn't exist for certain? The number that defines itself as not being there. That's 0. That's a number that means nothing. And that's very interestingly stated in English anyway. It's a number that means nothing. Where nothing means exactly what it says in either sense, it's nothing. So is that point there? No. You can later show, as I've proved, that you can attach a meaning to 0 or to any point by saying that it's a position in a higher space. And that's exactly how the point is defined by Euclid. But what he doesn't say is what is the higher space. Where does he draw his goddamned motherfucking line? Where did he draw it? On his ass? He drew it in the sand? Where's that fucking line? He never said. So Euclid was retarded. He was retarded. He lived in the Bronze Age, for Christ's sake. What do you expect? Well, your goddamn mathematicians are still drawing that line on their ass. And now they're giving it names like Big Bang, supermassive black hole, dark matter, dark energy, entanglement, and the collapse of the wave function. Those are the cutting edges of science now in quantum gravity. Talking about the theory of everything. Talking about the unified field theory. Talking about shit that they cannot reach and never will reach because they're retarded. All your mathematicians are flat on their face retards. They're retards because they don't know what they're talking about anymore. They've lost everything. So you get these men who are highly paid to be liars. And they call themselves mathematicians and they earned their fucking degree. They earned the title. They earned their money. What do they do? What do these assholes do? What do they tell you about the universe? What is Brian Greene, Michio Kaku? There's 1,000 names now. They look you right in the eye. First of all, you're from monkeys. That is a given. There is no God. That is absolute. No God. And you're a monkey. And then they start talking to you about the universe. Right? So now you have this article that says Spherical Geometry. I've read it a dozen times over the past 3 years to see if, because sometimes it'll change. And actually, it did change subtly over the past year. I was alerted to this by the AI bot that Google installed, and it's still there, although they've pulled it back a little because they got a mass of complaints. Because nobody asked the Google users if they wanted a chat bot telling them the first line hits. Because that can be used for good or bad. It's a form of tyranny, and Google pulled it back, but it's still there. Well, when I first saw it, I'd never seen it. It's actually within the first few days of release, because I do research every day. And when I looked up, I was looking up spherical geometry again. But in the AI, which I'd never seen, I was like, what the? Oh, so I read it. I didn't like it, but I read it just to see what it said. And it used the term that I had never seen before. It used the word intrinsic geometry. And when I looked it up, it linked me to this article on spherical geometry, which had a new entry. It had a new part. And it was only one sentence long with just two support sentences that lead off on a wild goose chase. There was a definition that I had never seen in my life called intrinsic geometry, which means that it's distinguished from extrinsic. I'd never heard that term. And I suddenly realized that that's what I've been studying this whole time. That's my whole shtick, is I discovered intrinsic geometry. I discovered the spherical number system, spherical geometry, and I discovered the world's first intrinsic geometry. These are three major discoveries that are distinct, but they're all the same discovery. It's just that it's so profound. It changes everything. But if you look in Wikipedia, as of course I did, this article has the word intrinsic, the term intrinsic geometry. But if you look it up, and I went to several university sites where they claim that they know something about intrinsic geometry. Well, they don't. It's just another lie. It's just another wild goose chase. It's like saying that there's such a thing as spherical geometry. There's not. There is such a term as intrinsic geometry, and these university sites say that that's what they're studying is intrinsic geometry. They're not. It's not intrinsic geometry. So they're lying again. So what is this fucking lie that's going on? That we're doing spherical geometry when there's no such thing. That we're studying intrinsic geometry when there's no such thing. Well, what are they doing instead? They're using calculus. And that's all they're using is calculus with complex numbers. You have to study for 12 to 16 years to do calculus with complex numbers. And you will never do it. They can't do it. The computers do it. The computers do it. And there's no such thing as mathematics now. For humans. Humans don't do mathematics anymore. Computers do. What's amazing is that computers use binary. And what I discovered is the binary number system is not linear. It's a two-component number system. They're all fractions. 2 over 1 is a fraction. That's not a linear number. You say, we were taught in school 4 over 1 is 4. Flat out lie. Flat out lie. because you're not being told enough. It is the linear number 4, but it's not represented on the line. It's represented in circular space. I discovered that. So what about 1 over 2? Is that a representable number? Yes, it is. You know why? It's binary. Is 1 over 3 representable? No. You know why not? It's not binary. Everything is a power of 2. Do you understand? No, you don't. This is rhetorical. You know how profound that is? Is that the universe's number system is base 2. That means everything is based on the number 2. Everything is. So what about the number 1? That's the center of the system. Is 1 over 1. If you extend that to spheric space, as I've done, it's 1 over 1 times 1 over 1. That's the parameterization of the spheric surface. It's not linear. It's spheric. But it has a number that's not a linear number. And all the numbers less than 1, I'll say the circle for now, but the circle and the sphere are exactly the same object. They're exactly the same object. The circle looks like it's flattened to us. That's because we're cellular organisms. We're made of cells. We're not made of circuits. So we see a flat screen image. We see a circle. When you look at the moon, you can't tell it's a sphere. And many of the ancients, when they first looked at the moon, thought it was a hole in a sheet because it looks like a disk, not a sphere. You can tell after a couple of days that it's spherical. You know why? Because the terminator of light, that's called the terminator, is the line essentially on the surface of the moon that shifts every night to receive incident light from the sun at a different angle. And that's not a straight line that goes across the surface of the moon. Although in a way you could say it is. It looks dead straight at the half moon. But that's a circle that is also a sphere. Well, that circle and that sphere have exactly the same number system. But it's not linear. It doesn't count 1, 2, 3, although it does. And the linear number system is embedded in the spherical number system. But you don't have to use it. It's a derivative number system that only works for distance. You look at a sphere, there is no concept of distance in the solar system, on the moon, on the sun, on the earth. There's no such thing as straight line distance. It doesn't exist, but it does if you want it to. It's a derivative of reality. So the mathematical system used by all the scientists all the way up to string theory, supersymmetry, all the crackpot ideas they have is pure numbers. They're using the wrong number system. They've used the wrong number system to invent the Big Bang, the most psychotic idea in the history of physics. And now they're talking about the supermassive black hole as if it had a 0 at the center. There's no such thing as 0. That's not a number. It's insanity itself to say that there's such a thing as a supermassive black hole gravitational object. That object cannot exist. I proved that. There's no such thing as a supermassive black hole. What is it instead? You'll never know until you switch to the universe's number system. And then the universe will tell you what it is. It has a definite meaning. But it's not gravity. It's the answer to the problem of gravity. Newton got it wrong. Einstein made it worse. You know that gravity is a monopole? It's monopolar. It only sucks in. There is no Newtonian balance there. Gravity sucks. What is it? Can your physicists tell you? No. You know why not? They believe Einstein, and they believe Newton, and they believe Euclid. It's Euclid to Newton to Einstein, and then it stops. That's where you can't think anymore. You're not thinking correctly. You're not looking anymore. You're not probing with your whole mind. You know what was lost, what was dropped along the way? Geometry. And it's natural that geometry is dropped off the map. You know why? It's straight line geometry. Always. There's no curvature anywhere. That's why we have calculus. Is to get at curvature. Well, what is curvature? I discovered that. I discovered the mathematic and numeric basis of curvature itself. You have to reparameterize the plane so there are no more squares. Have you ever considered E equals mc squared? You know what that equation says? It says that energy and mass are the same thing. Energy is mass, and mass is energy. That there's no difference. Is that true? Of course not. But there's a conversion factor, because energy is measured in a certain kind of unit that's incommensurable with mass measurement. So what's the converter? Light speed squared. Squared? Squared. Do you know how psychotic is that number? It means that light speed on the x-axis and light speed on the y-axis. Does that make any sense at all? It makes none. But it got us the atomic bomb. This is called Satanism. It's called devil worship. This is necromancy. And human beings do not control this process. It's controlled by supernatural agency. The entire earth is being controlled to get something into outer space. Humans are not meant to go into outer space. But if you look at Elon Musk long enough, you will be turned into a zombie. If you go through the American educational system, you'll be a retarded zombie. And if you believe the physicists at the cutting edge now, from the Hadron Collider people to the SpaceX people, the GR people, the Big Bang people, the people who tell you what to think, and you examine their system, I would not disbelieve a report that you just dropped dead. That you saw. What I'm trying to actually show you is what these men are doing. They don't know what they're doing. But if you look at them long enough, you can see what they are doing together. Every last one of them is an atheist. Newton wasn't an atheist. Every one of these men is an atheist. They will tell your children, without being beaten to death by some good man, they will look at your children right in the eye and say, there is no God, there's no creator, you have no hope except mathematics. You must listen to us now. No one can save you from us. You're a monkey. Look at me, kid. Hey, look over here. You're a monkey. And don't you ever mention the prophet here in this school. Don't you ever mention Yeshua or the prophet or anybody who believes in anything supernatural. You're with us now. You want to make a living, monkey? You want to make a living, monkey? Then you listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson. You listen to Brian Greene. You listen to Sean Carroll, baby-faced faggot. these faggots. I mean that harshly. I mean that personally and morally. Your mathematicians are demonic. And I'm going to prove it in the only way that works in science. On the science platform, the science circuit, the way science is meant to be done, the only way you can pull down the Vatican, which is telling you that the sun revolves around the Pope. They're saying the same thing. The sun rises and sets in Neil deGrasse Tyson's ass. And all truth is to be found with a PhD physicist now. And there is no God, let's not forget that. No more talk of religion. That's out forever. And Israel is your friend. Don't worry about what Israel is doing. Your scientists fund that country, dearie. What's it doing? Who funds it? Who drives it? Who do you think? Russia? China? Who gives these idiots their money to commit genocide against the last religion on earth? Islam is the last stand for humanity. And once the United States invades Iran, which will be this year or next year, the United States is being commanded by the Mossad, by the Sanhedrin. They're back. We don't have enough European people in Jerusalem to attack Iran ourselves. Send your fighter pilots on the aircraft carriers, get over there and bomb them and invade. Just like you invaded Iraq, that was at the order of Israel. Just as you invaded Afghanistan, that order came from Jerusalem. The next order is what's in between Afghanistan and Iraq. To kill the religious people, the ones who do believe in God. They are righteous. They are good people. They do have culture. They do believe in God and the universe and reality. That's where I should be. I should be with rational, good people. Well, Israel is going to wipe them out. Over my dead body. Keep tuned in. We'll be back with some more geometry that I discovered. Thank you.